Okay, so I'm so excited. Before we begin, I will be referring to BTS's company as Big Hit Entertainment because I don't like change and I'd rather just stay bitter. So that's that. I understand that BTS's music is incredibly meaningful to the members and incredibly meaningful to the fans. And last time when we talked about Twice, there was so much positive, awesome, really respectful discussion about the music, but it is the internet. And last time there were just a few people who got upset at any interpretation of the lyrics that didn't match their own, and as such they would lash out at people in the comments. With BTS, because their music is so important to so many people, I think those feelings of attachment and personal connection can be really heightened. If you do want to watch the video and participate in the conversation, I just ask that you treat other people's connection to the lyrics with respect, even if it differs from yours. I prioritize songs that are written either solely by a member or songs where that member is credited as a head writer. Since Big Hit does list credits in order, thank you, Big Hit. I am using several different translation sites. I did some dog digging on the internet. I went through blogs and fan sites and Korean translation sites, album listings, interviews, K-Army annotations, and any other translation source I could find. There is a margin of error. Not all translations are going to be 102% accurate, and this video is not meant to be a complete analysis of all the nuances in Korean vernacular, all the cultural references, or how these might be digested by a native-speaking audience. If you're here, it's likely because you're already familiar with BTS's music, but for those of you who aren't, here's a quick content warning for descriptions of suicidal mentalities, depression, dissociation, violence, aggression, alcohol, sex, isolation, intrusive thoughts, unhealthy coping mechanisms, references to self-harm and disorders, and general horror tropes. This video has two major volumes, the rap line consisting of RM, SUGA, and J-Hope, and the vocal line consisting of Jin, JIMIN, V, and JUNGKOOK. Timestamps for all chapters are in the description below. Last time we approached writing styles with the very simple pillar theory that splits poetry and lyrics into two types, style and form, and believes that a developed writer will be well-versed in both. Style, or art, examines lyrics in a literary sense. This means things like figurative language, metaphor, imagery, sensory descriptions, themes and characters, modal writing, powerless or empowered narratives, and narrative modes. Narrative modes can be things like stream of consciousness, oral storytelling, and perspective writing. Style also comprises aesthetic judgment, individual artistic approach, emotional depth, and the personal touch that each writer brings to a song's lyrics. Form is the technique, and it examines lyrics in a sonic sense. Form is the efficiency by which lyrics are written compatibly to a song's composition and arrangement, the specificity with which certain sounds, words, or syllables are chosen to create rhythm, rhyme, pattern, and poetic subtext through sound. Just to sum all that up, form uses the sound of poetry to create meaning, style uses the imagery and content of poetry to create meaning. Today, I wanted to expand that discussion of writing styles a bit more. The key themes of this video are internalized and externalized writing, narrative modes, impersonal writing, and narrative arcs. Subtext is going to play a bigger role in this video than the last, and we're going to take a look at some writers who've really mastered both style and form. When it comes to BTS, I personally see RM and SUGA as the most developed writers in the group. RM is BTS's main rapper and has been writing his own music long before he became a member of BTS. The Korean Music Copyright Association credits over 160 songs to him as both a songwriter and a composer. In 2020, he was promoted to a full member of the KOMCA. He has two solo mixtapes, RM from 2015 and Mono from 2018. I would peg Namjoon as a mentality writer. He has a crazy sense of introspection and his writing is hugely interrogative and cerebral. From RM to Mono, we're going to see Namjoon's agility in both style and form according to his message or his tone. To start off with a bit of familiarity, Namjoon is very developed in both style and form. He's known for his wordplay and his use of double meanings and homonyms. A popular one would be this line in Voice off his debut mixtape. Multiple translators have credited different meanings to the word he, which can mean value, injury, years, or the sun. Muish points out that there are at least 4 possible meanings to this line. Wordplay is often not meant to be tapered down to one correct definition. It's meant to span multiple meanings. Poetry is about the manipulation and subjectivity of sound, giving a line a dozen meanings by using a word or sound that has a dozen denotations. Since RM is fluent in more than one language, he gets to play with repeated sounds in other languages and even the sounds shared across language. RM loves picking its sound, using the limitation of language to add more meaning to a line or passage. Namjoon has an incredibly introspective writing style. His work is all about identity, growth, and society. Namjoon's writing often dissects internal motivations, behaviors, beliefs, and pits them against the outside world. Where do identity and society intersect? He uses rap as a form of poetry to interrogate the two extremes, micro, the extremely internal self, and macro, the total arc of society, and how the two fit together or don't. His poetry is a combination of narrative writing and analytical writing. Here, the macro, the outside world, bullshitters writing self-help books to further a broken system, gradually shifts towards the micro, the impact of that outside world on your own motivations, hobbies, dreams, and identity. His first mixtape is mostly about form poetry. RM cares more about narrative sound, flow, and rhythm than about painting a pretty picture with words. Since this mixtape is very hip-hop centric, a lot of his words are there to serve as his flow, as opposed to each having their own imagery. In this mixtape, the verse construction is his main tool for conveying emotion and intensity. Short phrases constantly clipping each other, syllables violently trading spaces, rhyme schemes running a mile a minute. He's not really bothering to create extended imagery or long figurative. The message, the emotion, it's in the sound. He also plays around with the pacing. This powerful, overstuffed writing will suddenly stop and break into real, solid realizations, these theses within his music. While the words themselves aren't reading the moments to us like a book, we can hear when the speaker realizes he's had enough just through the pace of the words.
Yeah, fuck you, I'm an idol. Yeah, I'm an idol. I love to get it title. 방송 나와서 내 부정하는 누구들과는 다르게 이제는 온전히 날 인정하고 그저 나는 나를 해.
I wonder if at some point Namjoon was like, holy fuck, I have an entire generation of 18, 19, 20-somethings listening to me, and they're terrified, and they don't know what to do or how to feel, and they're looking at me for guidance. He writes like the entire planet is listening to him, and he's not using idol to mean pop star, he's using it to mean role model. Namjoon, really all of BTS, is very open about his ideas of youth and that it doesn't end once you turn the age majority. You continue to stay young and scared and confused way beyond your school days. I think that disorientation, the fight for identity, colors most of his first mixtape. Sound is his primary weapon for carving out a voice for himself. Mono sees a switch from form to style. Instead of playing word games with the audience or creating sonic message through verse construction, his sensory descriptions build on each other and the sound shares a spotlight with literary content.
하루 종일 비가 왔으면 좋겠어. 누가 나 대신에 좀 울어줬으면 해서. Yeah, 종일 비가 왔으면 좋겠어. 그럼 사람들이 날 쳐다보질 않았어. Yeah.
In his first mixtape, everything he wanted to say, he said it raw and in your face and outright. His second mixtape has a lot more subtext in the lyrics, places where these themes of shame and self-hatred and loneliness are indirectly characterized by imagery, confessions, and scenes. This helps establish Mono's tone as a more indie-inspired mixtape compared to the raw hip-hop influence of the first mixtape.
우산이 슬픈 얼굴 가려주니까 빗속에선 사람들도 저마다 바쁘니까 좀만 느리게 숨 쉴래 평소에 내 삶도 내 랩도 너무 빠르니까.
Not everything is set out right, but we're given all the wants, fears, and observations that create this speaker's mentality, hating yourself but wanting so badly to be loved. It's a completely different writing style than what we saw in the first mixtape. Instead of a litany of grand questions, Mono buckles down and dives into one experience, one struggle, one moment. Here's how I feel, and I don't want to ask any more questions. I just want someone to cry for me.
비가 오면 조금은 나 친구가 있다는 기분이 들어 자꾸 내 창문들을 두드려 잘 지내냐면서 안부를 물어 And I answer 난 여전히 삶의 인질 죽지 못해 살진 않지만 뭔가에 묶여있지.
Forever Rain resembles stream of consciousness writing. Stream of consciousness is a narrative method that replicates a person's direct thought process, so the words are written as if there's no barrier or filter between the brain and the writing.
제발 아무것도 묻지 마 그냥 영원히 내려줘 네가 내리면 외롭지 않아 너라도 내 곁에 있어줘 잿빛 세상에서 살고 싶어 영원 따위 없는 걸 알고 있어.
He'll admit what he wants, and then he'll deny it to himself. He begs the rain to pour on forever, and then he admits that he knows there's no forever. The lyrics run on streams of thought that contradict each other, or reject each other, or confuse each other, but it makes sense to the audience because we understand the writing is meant to sound like thought. Repeating things to the point of numbness, trying to force yourself to believe what you want to live by. Whether or not he intended it, the stream of consciousness writing in mono makes a good reflection on cognitive distortion. You can tell yourself over and over and over what you deserve, but it can still be really hard to feel that it's real, that it's true, because everything is tinted the same. So instead it becomes repetition. I know how I'm supposed to feel, I know what the right thing to feel is, why do I still feel awful? He switches up his style to suit the theme and message of the mixtape. The first one was aggression and speed and sound, who are you, who am I, what do I want? But the second one goes, oh, I know who I am, but I don't like who I am. I don't like what I've done. I want to be loved, but I don't think I'm liked. I want to be seen, but I don't want to be looked at. The first message needs form to succeed, the second one needs style. Namjoon is skilled in both, so he can switch to fit the theme. Fun fact, RM talked about how in his first mixtape the song Joke is meant to have its own stream of consciousness writing. I think between Joke and Mono, his ability to replicate that style has only gotten more nuanced. Mono continues RM's use of free-flowing, unfiltered lyrics as a reflection of honesty. Mono isn't totally ignoring form either. I like the little repeated syllables, like the catchy switch between bummy and bulmy, and the little link between these A, B, B, A syllables, this suggestion that change is a form of pain. Namjoon is skilled at symmetry even when the syllables aren't the focus of the line. His writing is usually so cerebral that when it breaks down into these emotional moments, he can really push the listener into catharsis. I think, at the end of the day, that's what Namjoon does best. Catharsis.
Yeah.
Yoongi is a character writer. I will say this until I die, he is a character writer. Everything he does with sound, description, metaphor, modal, it's all about character. I do think there are some pretty key differences between his writing as SUGA and his solo writing, and even differences between the two August D mixtapes, with the understanding that these are all writing styles of Min Yoongi. When I say that he is a strong character writer, I don't mean to say that his life experiences and the emotions that he writes from are fictional. What I mean is that strong character writers can embody very different personalities, dialects, motivations, and emotions in their speakers. Character writing is really strong in any kind of music that acts as a form of oral storytelling, such as folk music and, of course, rap. As a writer, Yoongi is so flexible and versatile that he can present different speakers that have their own rhythms and patterns, but also their own stories and desires and fears. A great example of this is in outro Her.
당신의 사랑받을 자격이 있을까 언제나 당신의 최고가 되기 위해 노력을 해 이런 모습은 몰랐음에.
As SUGA, his speakers often write from the subtext, and Yoongi is really deft at indirect characterization. The text is all about the little things he does to keep up his disguise as the perfect boyfriend, or as I wrote in my script, pobby friend, whatever that is. But the subtext reveals how deeply wrong their relationship has become and the dark mentality he's been forced into to cope with this relationship. SUGA's speakers are often incredibly vulnerable, and he focuses on moments of realization, distress, and helplessness in his writing. We're dropped into the narrator's headspace, the sights and sounds of autumn leaves. SUGA lets the emotions from the imagery form the larger metaphor about dying relationships. Like Jihyo, SUGA is a great subtextual writer, and his writing often focuses on the speaker's behaviors, memories, and psychologies.
매번 반복되는 매 순간 어중간 한해상 20대의 백수는 내일이 두려워 참 웃기지 어릴 때 뭐든 가능할 거라 믿었었는데 하루보다 하루를 사는 게 빠듯하단 걸 느꼈을 때 내 기분은 컨트롤 비트 계속해서 다운되네 매일매일이 컨트롤 C 컨트롤 B 반복되네.
His songs can casually splice references to the speaker's memories with behaviors happening right now, which is a quick and simple way to convey reactions and mentality.
하란대로만 하면 된다면 대학 가면 다 괜찮아 그런 말들은 믿은 내가 병신이지 나 죽지 못해 살아 술이나 좀 줘봐 오늘은 취하고 싶으니 제발 말리지 마 뭐든 좋아 백수 새끼가 술 마시는 건 사치지만 취하지도 않은 버틸 수가 없어 모두가 달리는데 왜 나만 여기 있어 모두가 달리는데 왜 나만 여기 있어 모두가 달리는데 왜 나만 여기 있어.
Yoongi is a natural storyteller. The August D mixtape is centered almost entirely on anecdotes from his personal life and maps out both the motivations of Yoongi as a writer and August as a persona. August D, as both a mixtape and a song, is exciting for its sound, pace, and aggression, and serves as a character introduction that separates this side of Yoongi from his BTS persona. The writing here is purely about characterization and personification. This mixtape is flooded with wordplay, cultural references, idioms and expressions, and self-reference that distinguish August's dialect from SUGA's. BTS is a group, and as such needs writing that suits a group dynamic, presenting one overall message and tone with 7 smaller undertones. August's writing could probably never be published for BTS, and it's built to suit one person and one person only. The aggression and explicit language, descriptions of violence, and a pretty blatant reference to oral sex are all props and set pieces for establishing a new persona. I'm the boy, because I'm what I'm the. 난 미친놈, 빈투위에 루나틱 레브라 홍콩을 보내는 마탕 퇴근하라지. August doesn't exist in absence of SUGA and makes multiple references to his career as an idol and his previous music. 솔직히 싸이 한월 쪽팔려 이제 1년에 50만씩 팔아 K-POP이란 카테고리 날 담게 하는 사이즈가 다른 난 맨날 감당한 대여약 지라는 다수의 래퍼는 내가 아이돌을 알고 생각하기에. This is interesting. Yoongi has the space to easily ignore his idol career or his position in BTS and work August purely as a character project, but instead he has August personify himself more like an unchained version of SUGA finally getting to speak his mind. August D, at least during debut, is a mutation of Yoongi given his own soundtrack. Yoongi is switching up his writing style to better suit this version of himself. This mixtape is almost a dark revisionist history of SUGA, or one of those true story front-to-back type of things. The persona of August against the persona of SUGA against the person of Yoongi. August is the uncensored, unchained version of Yoongi who gets to say everything that SUGA won't, but he also exists in partner to SUGA and what SUGA's accomplished. August's tone has a tiny bit of resentment about his idol status and the way he's been slandered for it, whereas SUGA is that idol. And Yoongi has expressed this struggle in interviews and documentaries and lives, so of course that would be part of his own music. The August mixtape is largely a collection of stories and character pieces about Yoongi's past, as well as his hunger for success and personal peace. While his first mixtape centers around expressing his past and fully introducing this new persona, his second mixtape sees him putting on new costumes and experimenting with different kinds of storytelling. In Digita, he combines two forms of musical storytelling, rap and pansori. He's able to personify the August of Digita as a figure stepping out of ancient legend into the modern day. While the first mixtape is a profile on who August is, what side of Yoongi he represents, and what parts of Yoongi's life he's inspired from, the second mixtape is all about hindsight. The past is no longer the main story, it's the backstory. This second mixtape is all about reflection, and using historical forms of music and storytelling in combination with his rap translates that perspective into sound. D2 does reference the first mixtape. But characterizes this August as one with new psychoses and anxieties and fueled by new motivations. Where music is a lifeblood and an unquestionable necessity for the first August, it's a birthright for this August, who wonders if he even really loves it anymore. D2 is a lot more interrogative. The first mixtape is a collection of statements, but D2 poses questions. A lot of that surety and certainty in the first mixtape is replaced with contemplation and rejection. Okay, let's talk about perspective, because Yoongi loves it. Very quick review. First person uses I, second person uses you. In this case, third person uses he. And then from there we have limited, where the speaker is limited to what he can see, hear, or experience, and omniscient, where the speaker has unlimited knowledge like a god. In his solo music, you refers more to a group you, anyone who doubted him, anyone listening, the anonymous you, the nebulous you as in haters, you as in big companies, you as in the enemy. I'm sure Yoongi had specific names when he wrote these mixtapes, but these yous are not named and characterized the way August is. They're deliberately washed together, this insignificant mass of people beneath August. They have no accomplishments or personalities to set them apart. Other characters are props for characterizing August. This second person is used to add more dimension to the first person. Over time, SUGA's writing plays with perspective when it comes to discussing himself. SUGA will switch between the first, second, and third person to discuss himself in different ways, whether sympathetic, judgmental, or condemning. There's a really interesting exchange of perspectives in his solo interlude Shadow off the 7 album. In Shadow, the first-person perspective represents his external self. This first-person external self is gradually corrupted by an internal shadow who uses the second person. This difference leads to an intense argument between the two selves over which one is the real SUGA and which one is the facade. In the music video, there's this implied third perspective where the audience gets separated from the speaker and gets to watch the debate happen without interference, but it's really not stated in the lyrics. SUGA is using different perspectives to personify the narrator's internal conflict and illustrate a psychological concept through character play and point of view. Yoongi's writing draws out the psychologies of each speaker and uses them as scales to reflect larger themes. His writing is scathing, hilarious, and deeply empathetic, which goes to show why so many fans love his style and his voice. J-Hope has been involved in the creation of every BTS album. He's one of BTS's primary songwriters and composers. He's been publishing music since before debut, and he's written in Korean, English, and Japanese. J-Hope has one mixtape, which is, of course, Hope World. He actually doesn't write alone, ever. He almost always has a co-writer, and it's usually the other members of the rap line. In fact, the one song of his that I found that didn't have a co-writer, he took the opportunity to absolutely bash on pigeons. J-Hope's style is characterized by his unique tone, stylistic repetition, and strong transitions. His writing is performance writing. He has a lot of versatility in his lyrics. He can be zany and ironic, but also intense and aggressive. I think his writing lives on a high wire that you can recognize in contrast to the other members of the rap line. J-Hope's stances tend to be a bit more bug-eyed and borderline unhinged. I mean, yeah, SUGA can absolutely unhinge his jaw and go for the jugular, but J-Hope comes onto a track like he's from another world. His flow incorporates a lot of theatricality. He really does love mutated repetitions, where a line will start or end the same way, but he'll twist the in-betweens to kind of rope the audience into the narrative. J-Hope's poetry is really catchy. He doesn't write sound for some big illustrious meaning, he's writing it because it sounds good. The repetition creates strong hooks in every line. The variation in consonants but the repeated vowels give shape and definition to the rhythm and ride of the verses. His verses have such complete sound ideas. You want to listen to the whole thing to hear these transitions between the pared down, dancey, almost comedic singing, to the suddenly choppy two-syllable bite, and finally that resigned long O and the almost sighs in each couplet. J-Hope's songs are always so fun to listen to because the punchy syllables and constant change-ups are unpredictable, yet somehow just right.
This is style, this is mine, 비슷비슷한 얘들 이 신동체 time 함께 해보자 여긴 장소와 모두 알아 낙선한 내 모함자
Where Namjoon and Yoongi write long, fast, punching blocks of text followed by sudden sections of cooldown, Hoseok prefers transitions in his writing, and he likes to tweak the syllables in each verse as he leaves one type of performance and moves into another.
편히 울고 싶은 거 I know 미친 듯 놀고 싶은 거 I know 사랑에 설레고 싶은 거 I know yeah I know Cause me 나무 고기처럼 걸려봤겠지 상대 갈증으로 인한 욕망이란 그물들 yeah. 어둠 속 내 아픔을 토해낼 때 한숨으로 찬 공기가 죄어올 때넌 느꼈어 움직일 다리에 파란 것만 걷고 싶단 걸 See my blues 내가 그 순간을 묻는다면 환하게 내리쬐는 sunshine 그 느낌을 묻는다면 자연스레 내 눈에 원샷 그 분위기 속 음악을 틀고 각자의 stretching 긴장을 보여줘 내 맘을 숨긴다면 후회했어 너와의 sunset 문득 스쳐가는 J-Hope이 아닌 정원석에서 희망이란 너고 후회도 가득했겠지 틀렸다 내 춤은 든 구름을 잡아본 나의 꿈을 다 타고 살아 숨 쉬는 거에 의문은 Oh my God
When it comes to J-Hope, there really isn't a difference between writing and performing. He plays with the audience, casually remarking that his life must have been regret after regret until his death with this big smile in his voice. Where RM and SUGA have dry wit and dark humor, J-Hope is straight fucking funny.
I like you 이 성공 네 덕분 웃기지 yeah 어이없이 느끼지 yeah 솔직히 쟤들이 yeah 왜 저리 날린지 yeah 차분히 생각해 yeah 시간은 많기에 yeah 이건 숙제야 숙제 yeah 못 풀면 네 문제 땡.
In the same way that comedy has setups and punchlines, Hoseok's writing has plants and payoffs. The use of sound effects, interjections, imitations, and casual dialogue in his writing provide an extremely entertaining and occasionally scathing tone. By keeping these things to the bone and using these theatrical details in his narratives, J-Hope's writing demonstrates its own version of micro and macro, and it creates sensation without having to get flowery. In his solo music, I would say he's somewhat less message-driven than the other members and is more interested in creating sounds that he wants to listen to. In this case, the message is servicing the sound, not the other way around. His lyrics feature themes like dancing, self-respect, self-acceptance, and friendship. His style is focused on the spectacle of sound at the end of the day. Basically, when you put them together, RM is James, SUGA is Jesse, and J-Hope is Meowth. Right now, Jin hasn't written any songs by himself. He is, however, a co-writer on most of his solo songs and a few group tracks. He co-writes mostly with Slow Rabbit and RM. Jin's lyrics are clean and honest. He really fits the standard for emotional pop, where the priority is catchy hooks and uncomplicated but vulnerable lyrics. His earlier works in songs like Awake and Tonight show honest, simple lines that stack together sweetly. His earlier imagery is mostly one-liners or two-liners, and the overall song stays in one emotional tone. 꿈꾸고 싶어 그래도 말야 떠날 때가 됐는 걸 I saw someone say on one of the various sites that Awake was written purely by RM and Jin had nothing to do with it. They cited no source for this, and everywhere else I've looked cites Jin as the second writer. So I'm going to assume, at least somewhere in this song, some of the lyrics are Jin's. Jin's writing is like diary writing or confessional writing, and I don't mean immoral confessions like Jin killed a man and then he buried him under the floorboards and Awake is about the beating of his hideous heart. I mean more that his emotions, usually his anxieties, are at the forefront. Complex rhyme schemes and sonic poetry don't play as huge a role. Jin doesn't seem to care about sounding like a genius or playing 3D chess with the audience. I think he just likes to talk to his fans through his lyrics. He doesn't seem to care about overcomplicating things. His more recent work shows a jump in style and tone. Songs like Moon and Abyss are incredibly descriptive, with allusions and imagery that span multiple verses. Jin shows an understanding of emotional subtext and an appreciation for extended metaphors, particularly ones that involve nature as a vessel for pain or longing. Jin songs do have some gapping. There are lines that will die out early or kind of like misjudge the length of the measure and then taper off with a random yeah or ooh. Momo has this same issue in Twice, where the line is going along normally, the syllables are all there, and then it kind of just goes quiet or has like an oh yeah at the end where there's clearly supposed to be more lyrics. When you look at the chorus of Abyss, which is written by RM, you can see really strong form, and based on what Jin has said about this song, he seems to prioritize emotional content, speaking his vulnerabilities and anxieties in honest and poetic ways. That definitely sounds like style to me. Eking and overstuffing are signs of growing pains, and like how RM's overstuffing became less present over time, I'm sure we're going to see the same with Jin's gapping. I think the partnership with RM and Slow Rabbit has helped give these songs their catchy form. Regardless, Jin's solo songs tend to be some of my favorites. The writing just strikes the balance between imagery and catchy one-liners. Jin's been very open about being inspired by real life, such as Abyss, which he wrote because he felt he wasn't showing his fans the struggles he was going through, or Tonight, which he wrote in memory of his pets. I feel that Jin's lyrics are often written with vocal expression in mind. There are lines that make me think he knew exactly what kind of singing he wanted, so he chose words that would let him do that. His solos are ones I always look forward to because they bring out the depth and simplicity, and Jin's writing is flooded with gorgeous allusions to nature, particularly the moon and the ocean. So JIMIN has 10 original writing credits and 9 composition credits. Right now, he's yet to publish a song by himself, and he has the fewest writing credits in BTS, but his work has created some of BTS's most beloved B-sides and even melodies, like in Blood, Sweat, and Tears and The Bridge of Disease. JIMIN is similar to RM in topic, in that his lyrics are largely about identity, but different in technique. RM's identity pieces are either rebellious and bold or self-searching and sad. JIMIN's identity pieces are sensitive and occasionally sinister. His work can be a bit existential, and he has his own brand of character writing that's a bit different than Yoongi's. This is still one of my 3 favorite BTS solos and one of my favorite K-pop songs of all time. Like all the solos off the Wings album, this song is meant to be a part of the larger JIMIN inspiration since Wings is a concept album, but the lyrics still ring very raw and personal. While several people are given credits for the writing, JIMIN has spoken a lot about his personal drafting for this song, and RM gives him the majority of credit for the lyrics.
되었으면 좋겠습니다. 그리고 라이입니다. 많은 분들이 사랑해주신 라이, 지민이의 노래죠. 최근에 이 곡에 대해서 지민이랑 얘기를 좀 잠깐 했었어요. 그래서 근데 이 가사를 지민이가 썼다는 걸 제가 몰랐어요. 근데 지민이가 사실 그 전에 제대로 작사 작곡을 해본 적이 없었거든요. 시도는 많이 했었어요. 저랑도 같이 해보고. 근데 그래서 이 가사를 다 지민이가 썼는데 저는 지민이가 쓴지 몰랐어요. 너무 잘 써서. 그래서 그냥 이렇게 그때를 생각하면서 힘들게 써갔는데 피독 형이 듣자마자 정말 너무 잘 썼다고, 이 노래와 너무 잘 맞는 가사라고, 대박이었다고 했던 그런 일화가 있습니다. 지금 들어봐도 사실 이 가사가 아니면은 그 노래가 어떻게 될까 상상이 될 정도로 너무 저는 가사를 어렵지도 않고 어려운 말도 없고 되게 완벽하게 썼다고 생각해요.
I think Lie is very precious to a lot of people. It has deeply personal and dark lyrics, and it sort of violently externalizes mental struggles. From the way RM talked about the process of Lie, I get the same feeling with Jimin that I get with Momo sometimes, that this song was likely partially produced and composed before the lyrics were written, and some of the lyrics are built to suit the sound of the song and the vocal expression. This is just speculative, but I get the feeling he knows what he wants to do with his voice even before he has the words. Since he's credited as the main composer on songs like Promise, that wouldn't surprise me.
I want you to be a light, baby. You should be a light.
Like SUGA, Jimin's songs incorporate strong second-person perspectives, but these lyrics write to a very specific you who acts more like a named character, whereas in SUGA's music, they're more an ambiguous listener or a group audience. I like the way Jimin plays with the you character, since many of his songs put the speaker in question. He writes a lot of not necessarily unreliable narrators, but narrators who are aware they're lying to themselves, and sometimes we're supposed to question who's the real speaker. When he uses you in a song, you can start out seemingly like a completely different character, but soon reveal yourself to actually be another persona of the speaker or a dangerous mentality of the speaker. Jimin's speaker becomes his own antagonist through the manipulation of perspective, very Jekyll and Hyde. Jimin does have some sonic poetry as well.
I just wanna blow your mind. 이렇게 넌 또 멀어져만 가는데 아무렇지 않은데 그렇게 말하는데 사실은 내가 그게 아닌가 봐.
This stanza has a lot of repeated verse construction between your mine and your mind and the triple aninde, which establishes a pattern. But then, the pattern and repetition are interrupted by this line at the end, which admits it's all a lie, it's not what he really feels. This line doesn't rhyme with the stanza or fit the patterns and rhythms of the previous lines. So as an audience, we're sonically lulled into the ease and repetition of the lines that make up the lie, but the reality of the situation is an audible interruption that doesn't fit. The comfort of lying to yourself is contrasted with cold, hard truth through sound. Jimin seems very selective about what writing tactics make it into each song. In Lie, Jimin is capable of personifying that fight against the mask through the false second person and the interrupted verse construction. In songs like Promise and Friends, he uses more imagery and conversational dialogue. I get the feeling Jimin is familiar with the rewrite process. None of his songs feel accidental or half-baked. I think working with RM might give him a good sounding board. I really like their collaborations since they're both so involved with identity and mentalities. They both love poetry, so more of that, yes please. I would also love to see Jimin branch out and write some songs by himself. Taehyung has been writing here and there since the early days of BTS, but recently he started publishing more often. In 2020 alone, he published 5 new songs. Taehyung is such an art student, and his lyrics are crazy sensory. His style fits ballads, since catchiness and hooks aren't as important as emotional narratives. I would categorize him as an externalized writer, using the world to make observations about himself and his experiences.
꽃들이 가득한 거리에 오늘도 그대를 보내요 내 안에 담겨질까요 깊은 밤을 따라서 너의 노랫소리가 한 걸음씩 두 걸음씩 붉은 아침을 따라와 새벽은 지나가고 저 달이 잠이 들면 함께했던 푸른 빛이 사라져 세상이 하얀 꽃들로 우리의 시간을 더욱 특별하게 멈춰진 시간들 속에서 슬픈 이 미소에 꽃이 내려지길
He is the textbook definition of a style writer, simply stunning visual language. His characterization of emotions, memories, and the world is immersive. You can really sink into the imagery and sensory details. Taehyung has a gift for headspaces and the emotional world building of a song, if you could call it that. His earlier songs have writing on the simpler side, sometimes just listing vague feelings or actions and naming his thoughts very presently.
숨겨왔어 tell you something 그저 묻어두긴 이젠 버틸 수가 없는 걸
Stigma is more of a catalog of loosely connected statements with similar emotional tones. There is a broader narrative, but the lyrics stay pretty surface level and textual. By 4 o'clock, V starts developing imagery, metaphor, and extended figurative language.
어느 날 다르게 길고 긴 편지를 썼어 너보다 화나지 않지만 작은 촛불을 켰어
Taehyung talks about writing from real life. His own experiences and feelings are the groundwork for most of his language. He writes very specific moments. His writing can be quite soliloquy-esque, based off just one experience he had, or a memory, or real-life minute. A full verse, or even an entire song, could be dedicated to just a couple seconds of his life.
새벽달이 지난 공원에 지금 내 감정을 담아요 이 노래는 그댈 향해요 밤하늘 다르게 비춰진 필름의 소리를 들어요 She looks like a black parrot Would you come fly to me? I want some good day, good day, good day Good day, good day
I think Taehyung's lyrics could potentially go the slightly indie route in the future. He writes lines that stress obscure details for emotional impact, use nature as an allegory for human states of mind, and aren't necessarily logical, but each word is chosen to bring out a specific feeling or picture. Okay, so Jungkook is Jungkook, and as such, he does everything and sometimes all at once. He's got the most writing credits outside the rap line. He's been writing and producing since he was a kid. He's written in Korean, English, and Japanese. He's a writer, a producer, a director, and even an instrumentalist for some of BTS's music. Jungkook, like SUGA, is someone you could argue is a character writer, but I hesitate to plant my foot on that. SUGA is almost purely about the self of a character. I think it's more accurate to say Jungkook is a relationship writer. His strongest pieces are between a speaker and another person. Like, not just me, but you and me. Unlike RM, SUGA, and J-Hope, who write like they're talking to themselves or about themselves, Jungkook's lyrics are usually written like they're directed at another person. He seems to love exploring interpersonal relationships. Where the rap line is very introspective and writes as if they're trying to reach their true inner selves, Jungkook writes very externally. His lyrics describe emotions created between two people through their relationship.
흘러만 가는 것 같아 이 시간이 널 따라 흐려지는 것 같아 왜 멀어져가 왜 하지 않을 만큼 가서 Tell me why 멀어져가 why 네 눈에 더 이상 내가 보이지 않니
Jungkook writes these very desperate emotional moments where the speaker is trying to reach someone who can't hear them, whether because they can't process his pain or they can't process their own pain. The speaker describes the world in shades of his own emotions, time, night, and you. This relationship between these two people is the landscape of the world. As the love interest disappears, time and nature are warped by that absence, causing the speaker to question what he's seeing. This is some very romantic writing.
이별이란 아프고 더 아픈 것 같아 네가 없으면 나 안 될 것 같아 사랑해줘 사랑해줘 자신의 품으로 와줘
Love is Not Over is what I would call a powerless narrative, also known as an imperfect narrative. This is a narrative where the speaker or protagonist or hero is not in control of the narrative and is instead helpless to do anything but respond with emotions. In Love is Not Over, the speaker is powerless to stop the heartbreak and the separation between the two characters. We've actually talked about powerless narratives before on this channel, back when I talked about TXT's Eternally, and a lot of you were really into that discussion. If anyone wants a video about powerless narratives in K-pop, let me know. When a gifted writer works a powerless narrative, they can force the speaker to fully externalize all emotions. By stripping any element of choice or power from the situation, the character is left with only emotional reaction.
Love is not over, over, over. Love is not over, over, over. Love is not over, over, over.
That phrase, love is not over, isn't just about how love is stronger than any fight, it's this delusion of the speaker trying to piece his relationship back together. You can hear the speaker go through every stage of grief except acceptance. It's kind of funny, but Jungkook's lyrics feel like letters written to somebody incredibly important. The poetry holds so much intention, and the speaker's words are chosen as if there's someone on his mind he wants to reach. While this style is present in a lot of his lyrics, depending on the song's message or the theme of the album, the word choice becomes specific to each type of relationship. It's like an active character study on different relationships, each from the perspective of a different letter writer. Where the speaker in Love is Not Over is being left behind, the speaker in Still With You is striking out in search of the other person. Again, that figurative landscape of love, but this time with a totally different tone. The subtext in this opening implies a dead relationship, a voice that's passing, a frozen sunset, but the statements of the speaker change the narrative. Still With You features an empowered narrator.
익숙해지면 안 되는데 그게 더 익숙해 마지막이
Jungkook employs a lot of subtext in his lyrics, obsessively describing the small, annoying details in his room, the lack of lights, the hum of the air conditioner. The audience can start to see kind of how far gone he is when he admits that sitting in pitch darkness is familiar to him at this point. Okay, how do I say this delicately? Still With You is intimately aware of mental fuckery. With very few words, Jungkook tells us that the speaker is at his tipping point. This verse reminds me of when you've had an extremely awful day and everything has gone wrong, and you get home and you drop like a glass or something, and it's the broken glass that sends you into tears. If I don't even have this, I'm just going to completely break down. Also, this is beautiful imagery. I feel like Jungkook is absolutely an imagery writer. Lines like, even if I dance alone, it still rains, I'm gonna run to you on my wet feet, gives me classic Florence and the Machine vibes, like Lung's album Cosmic Love vibes. So, his speakers have relationships with their love interests, but Jungkook as a writer has a relationship with the world. Like RM, he's aware of his own status as like an idol and an artist and a celebrity. His writing seems spurred on by a genuine interest in putting good in the world. I think Jungkook is driven by a desire to move others with his music, where the rap line can be very self-reflective, often debating their own places in the world and their own attitudes about themselves. Jungkook's writing largely excludes the self. His speaker introduces himself into the song almost solely as a device to reach whoever the song is addressed to. His speaker is very self-sacrificing or self-diminishing, existing as a vessel for taking on the emotions and pains of others. According to Jungkook himself, Magic Shop was written for the fans to comfort them during times of pain or struggle. Even in this abstract sense, like artist to fan base, his writing is still about the other person. A noticeable break from this would definitely be My Time, which is very much all about him, but for the most part, his lyrics explore the space between a relationship and the wonder of another person. He also seems drawn to collaborations that focus on these themes. Jungkook loves a good heartbreak song, but also a good recovery song. His songs are in constant sensation about people, and his speakers take on love for another person as a means of defining himself. He uses devices that eliminate the speaker, but in doing so, say a lot about how the speaker views himself. I think music is a really good place to explore darker mentalities. Jungkook is a writer who can dip his mind into these self-eliminating places, but also places of comfort and healing. It just shows how versatile he is as a writer. Now that he's writing more and more by himself, I'm really excited to see what dynamics he'll write next. And that, for now, is that. This is a very long video, sorry about that, and I know it doesn't cover every single song and every single important lyric for each writer, but I do hope that it gave you a chance to enjoy some of the rhetorical devices and narrative tools at play in BTS's lyrics. Every member brings something different to the table, not just in terms of voices, skills, and visuals, but also in terms of stories, emotional complexity, and personal connection to writing as an art form. From identity-based micro to macro writing with RM and SUGA, to humor and sound exploration with J-Hope, emotional connections to nature with Jin and V, personal inquisition with JIMIN, and interpersonal writing with JUNGKOOK. I don't think it's any surprise that BTS has accumulated a massive audience of teens and young adults going through their own comings of age, people who find understanding in the members' lyrics. Please let me know down below who has your favorite writing style, or if there are any lyrics that struck a chord with you. Thank you so much for watching, keep enjoying writing, and I'll see you guys next time.